We have nothing to lose, and we're going to give it everything we have in Abu Dhabi. And of course, we are relying on probably still not a bit of like a crazy race like we had today, but we go in there with positive energy, and just nothing to lose, like I said, and try to have a good time as well.
I'm the guy who jumped from space.
I wanted to be the first human outside of an aircraft breaking the sound barrier.
Okay, here we go, Felix.
Got a few extras, just make sure we're squeaky clean. I say usual, but it should not be usual. All this was again outstanding what has been done last weekend. It would be wrong to take it for granted. We know how much work there is behind simply being solid. So it's a fantastic moment. I think whatever happens, it will be a sensational second part of the season, a very historical moment. So enjoy it. Let's stay tight. Let's look after each other. We know that if we put that guy in the right window, Max will be able to fight at the front. If he's able to fight at the front, whatever happens behind him is not in our control. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
The story of Red Bull does not begin in a high-tech lab in the Austrian or at a high-octane racing circuit. It begins in Bangkok, Thailand in the mid-1970s. In 1976, a Thai entrepreneur named Chaleo Yuvidia, son of a poor Chinese immigrants, introduced a drink called Krating Dang. It means red gore, a massive muscle wild bison native to Southeast Asia. Unlike the modern version, this original drink was a syrupy, non-carbonated tonic sold in small brown glass bottles. It wasn't marketed to athletes or club goers. It was a utilitarian tool for truck drivers, construction workers, and farmers who needed to pull double shifts. It was the drink of the everyman, a functional liquid that kept the engine of the Thai economy running. But the true transformation began in 1982 when Dietrich Mateschitz, a high-flying marketing executive for the German toothpaste company called Blendax, he arrived in Bangkok for a routine business trip. Exhausted by jet lag, he noticed local cab drivers drinking from these small brown bottles, so he tried one himself and was stunned by how quickly his fatigue vanished. While most executives would have dismissed it as a local curiosity, Mateschitz saw a global vacuum. In the West, energy came from coffee or tea. There was no such thing as an energy drink. So he realized that if he could transport this feeling of wakefulness to Europe, he wouldn't just be launching a product, he would be creating an industry. So in 1984, Mateschitz approached Chaleo with a bold proposal. They would each invest $500,000 of their savings to fund a new company called Red Bull. The ownership was split into two, 49% for Mateschitz and 49% for Chaleo, but it was agreed that Mateschitz would run the company. For 3 long years, Mateschitz tinkered with the formula. He knew Westerners would reject the thick medicinal syrup of the Thai original, so he added carbonation to give it a soft drink feel and slightly adjusted the sweetness. But his most genius move was the packaging and pricing. He designed the iconic tall, slim blue and silver can to distinguish it from the colorful soda cans of the era. He wanted it to look like a functional tool. He then priced it at nearly 300% of the cost of a Coca-Cola. His logic was simple: if a product claims to perform miracles, it shouldn't be cheap. A premium price creates a psychological belief in the product's efficacy. On April 1st, 1987, Red Bull launched in Austria. By the end of the first year, he had sold 1 million cans, and the syrup of the working class had successfully transformed into a premium lifestyle icon. By 1990, Red Bull was a localized success in Austria, but Mateschitz had eyes on the world. But there was a problem. He didn't have the marketing budget of global giants like Coca-Cola or Pepsi. He couldn't afford a Super Bowl ad or even a worldwide billboard campaign. This led to the creation of the most successful guerrilla marketing strategy in history. Instead of traditional media, Red Bull went underground. They targeted the opinion leaders of youth culture. They hired college students, the Red Bull Wings team, to drive around in Minus with giant cans strapped to the back, handing out free samples at beaches, libraries, and dorms. They didn't just give them to anyone. They gave them to the cool kids, the DJs, and the athletes who stayed up all night. This created the Red Bull might. Red Bull realized that building factories would be a massive financial drain, so they formed a strategic, exclusive partnership with Roche, an Austrian juice producer. Roche handles the entire production, canning, and logistics, while Red Bull owns 100% of the brand and marketing. By offloading the physical labor, Red Bull's balance sheet remained incredibly lean. Almost every cent of profit was immediately redirected into the most aggressive marketing machine in history. By the mid-90s, Red Bull launched in the UK and also in the United States. In every new market, they used the same strategy. They didn't just advertise, they created events. This led to the creation of the Red Bull Flug Tag, where people built homemade flying machines and jumped into rivers. It was chaotic, funny, and deeply brand aligned. It proved that Red Bull stood for daring and creativity, not just caffeine. By the time the decade closed, Red Bull was selling its first billionth can. Mateschitz had successfully bypassed the middlemen of advertising. By owning the culture, he owned the consumer. He had proven that in the modern economy, the product is secondary to the story. At the turn of the millennium, Red Bull reached a tipping point. Mateschitz realized that paying for a logo on someone else's jersey was old school. They wanted to control the brand's destiny, owning the athlete, the team, and the media rights. So in 2004, Red Bull made its most audacious move by purchasing the failing Jaguar Racing Formula One team, under the condition that they would invest hundreds of millions into its development. But Red Bull wasn't there to participate. They were there to conquer. By 2010, Sebastian Vettel would secure their first world championship, proving that their engineering prowess was as potent as their marketing. This decade also saw the birth of the Red Bull flywheel. The high profit margins from selling 12 billion cans funded the sports teams, which then created world-class content, and the content, in return, sold more cans. In 2007, they formalized this with the creation of Red Bull Media House. They realized that a video of a mountain biker wearing a Red Bull helmet is a product they can sell to Netflix, ESPN, or Discovery. They stopped being a company that advertises and became a media company that sells a drink. They are now producing documentaries, feature films, and high-octane sports coverage that was licensed globally, turning a marketing expense into a revenue-generating asset. Red Bull revolutionized soccer. They bought SV Austria Salzburg and rebranded it as FC Red Bull Salzburg, then bought the MetroStars in the US to create the New York Red Bulls. In 2009, they founded RB Leipzig in Germany. This wasn't just for ego, it was a sophisticated vertical integration strategy for player trading. They created a global conveyor belt. Buy a young player cheap in South America, develop them in their high-intensity Red Bull playing style in Salzburg, move them to the flagship club in Leipzig, and eventually sell them to the Premier League for a massive profit. By 2012, Red Bull wasn't just a beverage company. It was a sports and media conglomerate that happened to sell a drink to pay the bills. If the 2000s were about owning teams, the 2010s were about owning human history. On October 14, 2012, the world stood still for Red Bull Stratus. Felix Baumgartner jumped from a helium balloon in the stratosphere 128,000 feet above the Earth, becoming the first human to break the sound barrier in freefall. The event cost Red Bull roughly $50 million, but the returns were astronomical. It was broadcast live on YouTube to 8 million viewers, a record at the time. It generated over $6 billion in earned media value. Every news station on Earth showed the Red Bull logo as Baumgartner stepped off the ledge. It was the ultimate content play. They didn't just advertise, they became the news. This decade was also about refining their massive technical and real estate assets. They owned the Red Bull Ring, an F1 track, and multiple high-performance training centers. They were creating a world where the brand was unavoidable. The soccer division hit its stride, producing global stars like Erling Haaland, Dominik Szoboszlai, and Christopher Nkunku. These transfers generated hundreds of millions in profit, making the sports division increasingly self-sustaining. The F1 team, however, transitioned into the Max Verstappen era, securing a new generation of dominance that attracted high-value sponsorships from giants like Oracle, whose naming rights deal is valued at $100 million annually. By 2019, revenue soared to $6.6 billion, with record sales of 7.5 billion cans. They had successfully navigated the global shift to digital, turning Red Bull TV into a major streaming hub for extreme sports, music, and gaming. They were no longer fighting for shelf space in grocery stores, they were fighting for mind share on smartphone screens. Even as the world faced a global pandemic, Red Bull's diversified income streams from media licensing to prize money and beverage sales ensured that the company didn't just survive, but thrived. By the time Dietrich Mateschitz passed away in late 2022, his drink company was actually a global industrial complex that owned the most exciting moments in human history. Following the death of Dietrich Mateschitz, his son Mark Mateschitz took over his 49% stake in the company, while a new board of directors was appointed to manage their everyday operations. The strategy for the new Red Bull is one of institutional dominance and a ground turnover that surpassed $11.2 billion. But the engine isn't slowing down. In January 2025, they made their biggest gain move in history by appointing legendary manager Jurgen Klopp as global head of soccer. Klopp's role is to act as the architect of their global network, ensuring that every club in the network produces Red Bull players that appreciate in value every single day they are in the system. Today, Red Bull is a fortress of diversified income, with industry-leading profit margins. Their media house alone generates over $545 million in revenue through licensing and production. They also have player trading, a vertical integration system in soccer that generates hundreds of millions, with two F1 teams that attract over $140 million in sponsorship revenues. They have successfully decoupled their brand from just selling energy drinks to a global recognized powerhouse in sports and entertainment. But here's the catch. If Red Bull should stop selling energy drinks today, they would still be one of the most powerful sports and media companies on the planet. They've moved from brand to institution. They own the stadiums, the athletes, the media, and the data. Red Bull has fundamentally rewritten the rules of the global economy. They prove that you don't need to own the factory to own the world. You only need to own the attention. By building a self-sustaining marketing engine where the sports and media arms pay for themselves, they have created the ultimate business flywheel. From a Thai tonic for truckers to $11 billion empire, Red Bull's journey is the ultimate case study in brand over product. They give you wings,